Hello, everyone. It's Liz. I'm coming to you with a pre-recorded Freebie Friday. So making sure you will have free movies for the upcoming weekend. Thankfully, it will not be as hot as this past weekend, but if you're like me and just in love with air conditioning, you might want something to watch. And there are actually a lot of good movies out. I'm actually very happy with Pluto TV. I think they have a lot of good selections, and we're going to start with them. The first is The Quiet Man, so we're going to for classic. This is a John Wayne film, 1952, and directed by John Ford. And this is actually kind of a departure from the two of them because when you think of John Wayne, you think of westerns. This is sort of this is a romantic drama about a boxer who accidentally kills someone in the ring and moves to Ireland. I've never been a huge John Wayne fan, but I do think this movie is good. I mean, I've also never been a Western fan, so that's likely why John Wayne is never an actor that's really resonated with me. Um, but came from Irish family, and this was watched more than one time on a random St. Patty's Day, so I'd recommend it. Up next, we're going sort of the horror sci-fi ghost angle with not Sixth Sense, but Stir of Echoes. So 1999, I'm sure we all remember, Sixth Sense comes out and kind of just becomes the sleeper hit of the summer. Everyone goes and sees it. You can't tell anyone about the ending. And poor Stir of Echoes, which came out like roughly around the same time and just got steamrolled. It's like the thing in Blade Runner coming out right after E.T. It's just like, well, we're not making money. But I actually think Stir of Echoes is an incredibly underrated movie and a really good ghost story. So Kevin Bacon stars as a man. He has visions and he starts to see images of a crime taking place in this house and he tries to solve it. Um, it's again, it is similar to The Sixth Sense. It's not a one-to-one, but it even got accused of being a ripoff where it's like, well, there's similar stories, but I would really recommend watching Stir of Echoes. It's also got kind of a little true crime angle to it, so if you like true crime, you might also like this film as well, but it's one of those hidden gems that I wish more people would discover, and I'm glad it's available for free. So up next is a great little, speaking of hidden gem, a great little comedy starring Goldie Hawn and Chevy Chase, who just work so well together. It's 1980s, seems like old times. So this is actually written by Neil Simon, and so Chevy Chase and Goldie Hawn collaborated once before in this film called Foul Play, and it was a very big hit with the audiences. So I think the studios wanted them to work together again. So this movie comes along, and it is a charming little film. So Goldie Hawn is a big-hearted lawyer. She adopts all these dogs. She takes care of people that she's gotten out of the system. And Chevy Chase is her ex-husband, who's a writer who's been roped into a bank robbery, and he comes to her for help. Hijinks ensue. It really is one where I'm like, if you did not have two incredibly funny leads, I can't imagine it working as well. But again, it just wins you over. Good supporting performances by T.K. Carter and Charles Grodin as well. Again, this is one of those, if you'd never seen it, I would definitely watch it, and I probably wouldn't have even heard of it if not for the great podcast 80s all over. Up next, speaking of 80s, and speaking of 80s icons, on Tubi, they have Vamp. And I don't know if I can say this movie is good, but this movie is worth watching for one reason only, and that is Grace Jones. I love Grace Jones. She is an icon. I love her music, her fashion style. I'm sorry, I can't hear you over the sound of how awesome she is. And unfortunately, I don't think Hollywood knew what to do with her at the time. She's in the Conan sequel, and she's good in that. And I think this is probably the best use of her I've seen in a film, but I think that maybe now with a resurgence in sort of weird, more artistic sci-fi and artistic horror, I think Grace Jones would have had a real home in film. I even kind of I was watching Blade Runner 2049, and I'm like, yeah, why did they get Grace Jones for this? She would fit right in with this aesthetic. But if you want to see one of Grace Jones' few films, I would say watch Vamp and be a little mad like me that Hollywood didn't use it the right way. All right, I digress. Up now to someone Hollywood always knew how to use the right way, the legendary heartthrob Harrison Ford in Sabrina, the 1995 version. I think I can speak for a whole lot of people, and they're like, I totally had a crush on Harrison Ford. I mean, you have Indiana Jones and Star Wars. I mean, of course. And this one is a really good remake. Again, I am not of the mindset that all remakes are automatically bad. I think some can be great and some can be good. I think this is a really nice little update, and you really do have Harrison Ford in just peak charming. He's kind of got that. He's got a mix of the swagger he has in Indiana Jones, but also the kind of, I don't want to say meekness, but businessman. I guess the humble businessman attitude that he had in Working Girl. But this movie's really good. I think it's a good remake. I definitely would give it a watch. So we're actually going to pivot back to sci-fi on IMDb TV. And this is a movie that, I don't want to say scarred me, but its ending sequence is pretty infamous. And this is Fire in the Sky. So this is based on a story of a real, but a person's account of an alien abduction. And there is a scene where you actually see what happens to the person who is abducted towards the end. But a lot of this movie is actually just this man trying to adjust, coming back to normal, and his friends and family trying to help him out. So in this sci-fi film, you actually have, I think, a fairly successful human drama here. Again, it's one of those, it gained infamy for one scene, but I actually think overall it's a fairly successful film. Speaking of sci-fi, this is definitely more, I would say, heady sci-fi, so it's not all alien abductions, it's more about, like, what hath science wrought. And it's Gattaca with former indie superstar couple Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman. And this is a film that's gotten kind of more relevant as time has gone along because we're talking about CRISPR, we're talking about genetic engineering and modification. And this is set in a world where, like pretty much designer children exist. So, I mean, hopefully we'll never get to that point because there are, bioethicists that exist that try to keep that stuff at bay. But if you would like to see a worst case scenario, Gattaca's really good. And hey, a lot of people my age first came to know about the problems with genetic engineering run amok because of this movie. So, hey, sometimes film can teach you things. And my final recommendation of the day is a great film, one of the great modern American films, one of the great films of the 1990s indie scene. It is Todd Haynes' Safe. And I am so glad this is available for free. This is notable as Todd Haynes' debut. You probably know him from stuff like Far From Heaven. And actually, if you were like me and kind of had a curious streak in college, you tried to track down his little autobiographical documentary of Karen Carpenter starring a Barbie doll. I have seen it. Thank you, YouTube. It's weird. But this is his debut feature film, and also Julianne Moore's not debut. She'd been in other films, like she's been in Shortcuts and the wonderfully bonkers domestic drama The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. I genuinely love that movie. But this is her big starring role, and she stars as a suburban housewife, lives a fairly sterile life, ordinary, and she starts to get these environmental reactions. She starts to get nosebleeds, headaches, seizures, and she doesn't know what's wrong with her. And she eventually tries to seek for answers that are also maybe not great. It's a really good film about, people still debated what it's actually about. There's people who think that it's a metaphor for drugs entering suburbia, or diseases like AIDS getting out of the cities and entering suburbia, or I should say more accurately, the fear of that, or the side effect of pollution, where we're seeing a lot of environmental illnesses. But it is a great film. It's amazingly directed. You have Julianne Moore. I really don't know how it took her from Until Still Alice to win an Oscar. If it were up to me, she would have gotten one for Safe, but it is an amazing movie, and I'm so glad it's available for people to watch. So, of course I'd recommend all these movies, but please go watch Safe. Hopefully you'll watch one of these, and have a great weekend. I'll see you on Monday.